Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers is probably one of the greatest stories ever told. I'm just gonna throw it out there. Like, to me, it is incredible. I feel like Hickman writes the stories as like a book and then turns it in as a script, and then somebody actually does the lettering, and then somebody, does the art. It's amazing the way this gets done because it does such a, like, it tells such an incredible story. Now, here's a funny thing. This whole idea again basically starts the whole play of the collapse of the multiverse, which is to say the end of the Marvel universe and then the starting of all new, all different Marvel. So it goes into Secret Wars and all that kind of good stuff. But like I said, it's a huge epic. So things just get crazy and crazy and crazy as time goes on. But initially what we do is we pick up in Wakanda about a day before really the current events. And so what we end up doing is, of course, we follow the technologically advanced nature of Wakanda. Now, for those of you guys who are new to Marvel Comics, who are new to like the Black Panther mythos, things like that, whether it's because you're getting into the movies or what have you, Wakanda is the most advanced city in the world. It's technologically advanced on a multitude of different platforms. And the reason for this is because Wakanda is the only source of Wakandan vibranium. Remember, there's two types. There's anti-metal vibranium, which basically breaks down metal on the atomic level, which is what you find in the Antarctic or the Arctic or something along those lines. Wakandan vibranium can absorb sound and also amplify magic. And so because of that, it's actually the most sought after form of vibranium. But because Wakanda is the only place to get it, they can charge just insane rates for people to get a hold of it. But not to mention that they have like tons and tons of it. Now, keep in mind, this comes after Doom War. And so really, with the events of Doom War taking place, Dr. Doom invading Wakanda, and of course you'll find that video down in the description, but Dr. Doom invading Wakanda for the purpose of basically trying to find a way to steal all the vibranium and amplify his own magical abilities for world domination. The response to this, the result, is that Black Panther rendered all vibranium across the world completely inert. Now, the reason why that matters is because with vibranium being rendered useless, Wakanda basically destroyed his entire country's like social and economic structure. They had no means to generate money. They were just a country out there in Africa somewhere. And so because of this, Black Panther, in addition to the Doom War events, had actually let his sister Shuri take his place, and she became the new Black Panther. And the result was that T'Challa actually just became somewhat of a figurehead. But when the time came for him to basically retake his crown, it really wasn't there. It was, you destroyed everything that made our country what it is, you're not going to be Black Panther again. And so in this instance, because he's basically the smartest person in his country, his role's been confined more to like an advisory position and really more of like teaching and instruction. Now, because Wakanda's so advanced, they've charted all these aspects of the spaceways. I mean, they're not really launching ships into space, but they've charted all these different aspects of the spaceways. Their knowledge of science and technology is well beyond normal humans. And that's what this does. It initially emphasizes the idea that they're focusing on, expanding their own, knowledge and so on and so forth. But what ends up happening is that in the midst of all this, T'Challa is actually sidetracked by the arrival of an Earth from presumably another dimension. Now, this is where things start to get kind of crazy and start to get kind of hairy because we don't know where this Earth came from. All we know is that this Earth is there. And so the question is, where did it come from? Well, this comes with the arrival of a character known as Black Swan. Now, this is when we start to get into like Thanos's Black Order to a degree. Really, Black Swan was never really part of the Black Order per se in terms of like what you think of Corvus Glaive, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight. The whole idea is that she actually joins it later on, but this sets the stage for all that stuff happening. Now, of course, they're actually speaking High Sumerian, a language that hasn't been spoken on Earth in, years and years, decades, thousands of years, probably not that knowledgeable about the Sumerian language. But the idea here is that Black Panther is able to understand her to a degree, but of course, once she starts speaking English, everything becomes a whole lot simpler. But this woman, Black Swan, starts speaking cryptically, talking about destroying a world, different things like that. And before Black Panther can stop her, not only do her soldiers kill some of the people from his own tribe, she ends up destroying the Earth. Now, the death of some of these members of Black Panther's community is a no-no. Keep in mind, when it comes to T'Challa, he guards his Wakandan country jealously. Woe betide the poor soul who comes into his country and starts causing trouble, because chances are they won't make it out in one piece. The problem with this is under normal circumstances, he would have killed her, no questions asked. She would have been done. It would have been one of those things, he would have killed her and buried her in the mountains, and that would have been the end of Black Swan. But because of the fact that she comes bearing, this gift of destruction for a whole nother world and blows the planet to pieces, he can't kill her, because the question is, Why is she here? And why in the world did this planet get destroyed? And so what T'Challa ends up doing is the one thing he never wanted to do, and that's reform the Illuminati. Now, a little bit of history here. Marvel Comics has had a litany of events over the course of their publication history. We've had the Onslaught Saga, we've had the Age of Apocalypse, we've had Maximum Security, where the Earth was turned into a prison planet run by Ronan the Accuser. We've had all these different events take place, Secret Invasion, Civil War, so on and so forth. The biggest, and probably, well, not really the biggest, but probably the most important event to take place is the Kree-Skrull War. And the reason why is because within the Marvel Universe, the Kree and the Skrulls are warring races that have been battling one another for millions and millions and millions of years. The creation of the Inhumans was a byproduct of the Kree to create a race that could basically serve as infiltrators, they could deal with espionage, and they could be soldiers. The Kree abandoned the project before anything actually came of the Inhumans, and they ended up just becoming a self-governing society. But these groups had been warring forever. Now, the Kree-Skrull War came dangerously close to impacting Earth, and what ended up happening is Iron Man Tony Stark came to the realization that Doctor Strange, that Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, Black Bolt of the Inhumans, that these characters knew about the Kree-Skrull War. Professor X, they knew about what was going on, and each of them had a piece of the information that, if brought together, would have allowed them to basically stave off any and all efforts of the Kree or the Skrulls to impact Earth. And so what Tony Stark did is he formed a group called the Illuminati. And the idea is that because the Inhumans are so isolated, because Doctor Strange is isolated, because Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four are usually off exploring space, because Professor X and the mutants are largely isolated within Westchester, or at least they were at the time, the result is that they basically began coming together and pooling their information so that if any one major crisis took place, the Illuminati would be able to operate behind the scenes. Now, the other half of this is that the Illuminati was very hush-hush. Nobody was supposed to know that they exist. But another introduction into the story is that Captain America was part of the Illuminati, and that was never originally the case. Originally, it was basically everyone you see here except Captain America. So this is a new bit of information, and it's actually pretty huge because he's going to be the voice of reason here for the most part. Now, of course, what this also does is it comes from the fallout of Avengers versus X-Men. Remember, that story, of course, you'll find that in the description as well. That story dealt with the return of the Phoenix Force. It resulted in Tony Stark trying to destroy the Phoenix Force. It dispersed itself among Emma Frost, Colossus, Colossus' sister, Illyana Rasputin. But the most important part of this is Namor the Submariner. Because of the fact that Namor, as part of the Phoenix Five, had basically launched an attack against Wakanda and obliterated most of the city itself, this created a huge amount of animosity between Black Panther and between Namor the Submariner. The issue with this is that there was a little bit of trying to figure out what was going on. Namor was not really himself, and so while T'Challa wanted to hold him accountable, to a degree he couldn't. At the same time, it was the rebuilding phase, so any desire he had for revenge had to be put on hold while Wakanda was being rebuilt, because again, T'Challa's first and most important effort is put towards his people, and then everything else is secondary. And so because of this, the relationship between Black Panther and T'Challa is tenuous at best, and there's a lot of hatred between the two of them. But with Reed Richards basically showing up and speaking to Black Swan, what she ends up telling him are these cryptic things about the Wheel of Death and about some being named Raboom Alal. We don't really know who he is. We just know that apparently he's the one that initiated this whole cycle, or at the very least, he's overseeing the entire thing. So again, this is very mysterious. This is very cryptic. But what ends up happening, and this is probably the most important thing that Black Swan says, is that those individuals who try to stop Raboom Alal, the Great Destroyer, those individuals who try to stand in the way of this wheel of destruction, ultimately will end up losing themselves. They will come to a crossroads, and they will have to make a choice. Do they let a world live, or do they let a world die? And ultimately, if they choose to live, if they want to continue their lives, they're gonna have to kill a world. And what it does is it breaks them on the emotional level, because what this means now is no longer are they protectors. Instead, they're killers, because when you destroy a world, you're destroying everybody on that world. You're destroying billions and billions of people. And that's the choice that has to be made here. Now, of course, Black Swan also hits at the idea that she's done this multiple times, and she herself has lost her way. She's lost who it was that made her who she is, but that's the sacrifice she makes in order to be a Black Swan. So again, with Reed Richards basically coming back to the Illuminati with everything he's learned, what we end up finding out is this is basically a domino effect. Somewhere along the line, a universe was destroyed. We don't know how and we don't know why, but we know a universe was destroyed. Now it works like this. Let's say that I take like 5 dominoes or 10 dominoes or 20 dominoes, however many. Let's say I take dominoes and I line them up next to each other. And let's say I pick the 2 middle dominoes and I knock them both to different sides. They will just end up knocking over dominoes next to them. And that's what's happening right now. The destruction of this universe created a cascading effect. And like you pushing, walls on either side of you, it ends up just causing universes to start bumping into each other. Now, the point of impact for these universes is Earth. If both Earths hit each other, both universes will be totally obliterated. If one Earth is destroyed, then the universes will pass right through each other and nothing will happen, nobody will be the wiser. But that's why these Earths are popping up, is because it is basically the point of an incursion is what it's called. When this Earth pops up, you have 8 hours between the time you first see it and the time it crashes into you. And so that's the choice that they're basically being given here. That's what they're being told. The survival of Earth, the survival of the main Marvel universe hinges on the Illuminati's willingness to destroy a planet. Now, of course, this also leads to Captain America immediately popping up and saying, nope, we are not going to destroy worlds. That is not going to happen. Now, this is kind of a cool moment, and this is why Captain America is on the Illuminati, because he's the voice of reason. Keep in mind, Captain America is not the smartest person in the world. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. What he is emotional and reasonable. He's able to combine those two things together to come to what would be the most reasonable decision in a circumstance. On the other hand, you've got Doctor Strange, you've got Reed Richards, you've got Black Panther, you've got Professor X, you've got these guys. Well, really, Professor X isn't here. He's dead. He died in Avengers versus X-Men, which is why he's not there. But you have these characters who, for the most part, are extremely intelligent and in a lot of ways are disconnected from humanity. And so really, Captain America is the voice of the people. He's the voice of the people in this instance saying, should we kill a planet? Should we not kill a planet? And so in his mind, the answer to this is no. Not only that, they have an out. And this is when we basically begin learning that each member of the Illuminati possesses an Infinity Stone. And the reason for this is because of the fact that, one, it's designed to basically show that each member is who they claim to be. Now, of course, Doctor Strange has magic at his disposal to basically prove that these individuals are who they claim to be. But as we know from years past, stories like Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, Infinity Crusade, all these different things, that the Infinity Stones can easily overpower Doctor Strange's magic. And so because of this, it's basically an identity verification. It's them essentially showing that they are who they claim to be. Now, the other half of this is that where, Captain America says, no, we are not going to go around and kill planets. At the end of the day, the other members of the Illuminati behind Captain America's back are like, look, it's nice that he has that idea, but if it comes down to it, we will kill a world. We will obliterate a planet to save our own. That's just the way it is. Either he can be on board or he can get the boot. Now, this is huge because remember, when it comes to Captain America as a character, at least before the whole Secret Empire thing, Captain America's word in a lot of ways was law. When superheroes came along and they said, okay, like we're in this crazy situation, Spider-Man, what do you think that we should do? Well, I think we should do this. Reed Richards, what do you think we should do? Well, I think we should do this. Captain America, what do you think? I think we're going to do this. Done. That's the way it worked in Marvel Comics. When Captain America said, we're doing something, it got done for the most part. I mean, there were a few instances where it wasn't necessarily the case, but that's the respect that superheroes in the Marvel Universe have for Steve Rogers. And so what we end up doing is we basically pick up with this aftermath of sorts of Avengers versus X-Men because of the fact that it created a rift, because Cyclops is largely considered to be untrustworthy among the X-Men team, because of the fact that, again, following the events of Schism and so on and so forth, we end up having Hank McCoy, who takes up the role as being the guy that basically runs the Xavier Institute, or at least to a degree, is kind of the guy who's running the Xavier Institute. What this means is that he's actually the person who inherits a piece of the will of Charles Xavier. Now, the funny thing about this is that Xavier just basically gives him an envelope, or at least he's handed an envelope created by Xavier that just says remember. And what this does is it triggers a psychic memory. Now, this is pretty cool, and it's actually pretty ingenuitive. When it comes to Charles Xavier in Marvel Comics, his role, for the most part, was usually pretty straightforward. He was a guide for the X-Men. He would train them, he would teach them, he would tell them that, hey, look, the X-Men are a team designed more of a humanitarian group as opposed opposed to like a group of soldiers or like a war group or anything like that. But the idea is that for the most part, he would plant these subliminal messages in people's minds, but usually it was done against villains or it was done to control a situation. We didn't really see instances like this where a memory was put in Beast's mind for the purpose of him basically just sort of, eventually realizing it when Charles Xavier triggers it. And so because of this, what he ends up, being told by this psychic memory is that because Professor X was part of the Illuminati, and because each member of the Illuminati possessed an Infinity Stone in order to verify their identity and their allegiance to the group, Charles Xavier hands his Infinity Stone over to Beast, who in turn is immediately contacted by the Illuminati themselves. Now remember, one of the things that was established in the Illuminati miniseries is that where it was previously believed that the Infinity Stones were just these items that just kind of existed out there, instead, they're actually inherently drawn to one another. The Infinity Stones always want to be brought together again. And so really it was more like this stone was like a tracking device, if anything. With the Illuminati in possession of the other 5 stones and then Beast having his, they immediately knew where to go find it. They immediately knew where it was located at. Now, of course, this brings Hank McCoy into the situation with the question of, is he okay with what the Illuminati is looking to do? More so than that, it's actually pretty ingenious in the sense that some devices have been constructed that will basically activate when an incursion is happening or when an incursion is about to happen anywhere on the world. So if the Illuminati are off with their own respective teams and they're off doing their own thing and they're out in space or something along those lines and their palms start blinking red, they immediately know to head back to Earth. Now, of course, this all ends up being a moot point anyway as the story progresses, just because of the fact that things sort of end up popping off. But the other funny thing about this is that Reed Richards initially goes to Black Swan with the idea of, hey, we have this idea to basically destroy or to stop the incursions from happening. And when they tell her their idea is to use the Infinity Gauntlet, Black Swan's response is, that's not going to work because other people have tried. We know what the Infinity Stones are. From her universe, she knows what they are. And she's been to universes where people have tried to use them. And in every single instance, the Infinity Gauntlet always fails. Now, the biggest reason for this was actually solidified in the story. I think it was the JLA Avengers crossover, and it was the idea that the Infinity Gauntlet only works in its own universe. Now, this has been confirmed before, but this was really sort of etched in stone as just a solidified thing. If you are in the main Marvel universe, the Infinity Gauntlet only works in that universe. If you're in the Ultimate Universe, the Infinity Gauntlet only works in that universe. You can't take the Infinity Gauntlet from one universe into another and expect it to work. It doesn't happen. And because of the fact that these are universes crossing over and crashing into one another, ultimately it proves to be unsuccessful. Not only that, it's one heck of a show, because what ends up happening is with the Infinity Gauntlet being reformed, the question becomes, who's the one who's going to wield it? Well, again, this taps into the whole idea, the respect of Captain America, because where the Watcher realizes the Infinity Gauntlet's been reformed, Galactus, especially Thanos, where they all realize this gauntlet's been reassembled, undoubtedly, the only person that the Illuminati deem worthy of wielding it is Captain America, and it is crazy because he's so overwhelmed with power. But here's the difference. Captain America's will is completely unshakable. His resolve usually cannot be questioned. The only instance where I've ever seen Captain America seem to give up was in like Age of Ultron, when Ultron had basically just conquered the Earth and Captain America didn't know what to do. He was just like, I have no plan. Like, I don't know how to respond. There's nothing we can do. All we can do is wait it out and hope we survive to see tomorrow. It was the most defeated thing that I've ever seen in the history of Marvel. But in this instance, Captain America's will is basically unstoppable. And so where other members like Reed Richards, for example, got the Infinity Gauntlet and were corrupted by it, Captain America immediately knows how to control it and is immediately able to dominate it. Now, of course, this is his effort to basically push this incursing Earth away and try to get it to move away as far as he can, send that universe back. The problem with this is that the amount of energy, the sheer amount of energy that it takes in order to pull this off is more than the Infinity Gauntlet can handle. And the result is that all the Infinity Stones, except for the Time Stone, shatter into pieces. The Time Stone actually just vanishes. It disappears. But in the mind of the Illuminati, this is it. there's no hope here. Like, there's no way they can pull it off, because remember, in the Marvel Universe, the Infinity Gauntlet's the most powerful artifact in existence. He who wields the Infinity Gauntlet controls all things that there is. And so because of this, if the Infinity Gauntlet gets destroyed, then there's no way for them to win. And so once they go back and they begin trying to figure out a next way to, what this next step is, everybody in the Illuminati, except for Captain America, basically begins saying, if we couldn't use the Infinity Gauntlet to destroy these incursing Earths or to push them away, then the only option we have is to blow these planets up. That's it. Black Swan was right when she said, we're gonna have to destroy worlds. We're gonna have to destroy each and every one of these incursing worlds. And so in this moment where Captain America basically says, no, I cannot abide this, I cannot side with this, we have to find another way. Ultimately, what ends up happening is Doctor Strange, under the direction of Tony Stark, wipes the mind of Captain America, eliminating every little bit of knowledge that he's ever had that he was ever part of the Illuminati, allowing the Illuminati to go forward with the purpose of destroying worlds. With that being said, guys, God, I love this story so much. And it only gets better. It only gets better. What a clickbait title. Captain America gets the Infinity Gauntlet. Man, like, dude, this story is so good. It is, oh man, dude, I love Hickman's Avengers, the new Avengers. It's, man, fanboy. Dude, I love this story so much. Because it's just so good. Oh my God, it's so good. Anyway, guys, if you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.